Welcome! Most of us picture ancient India being ruled by divine kings, their every command echoing the whims of the gods. But what if that was a carefully constructed myth? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the hard realities of ancient Indian statecraft. We're moving beyond the stories to reveal a system built on, brutal pragmatism, radical contracts, and a surprising science of power. Let's get into it.
So, was he? This is the central idea we're here to really challenge. The image of the absolute, godlike monarch is powerful, for sure. But the ancient texts themselves, they tell a very, very different story. Get ready for the first revelation.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the chaos that made the state necessary in the first place. Then, look at the king's real job. We'll uncover some forgotten democracies, understand the raw logic of law and order, see the state as a living body, and finally, explore its lasting influence. Every step is going to peel back another layer of what we thought we knew.
So, where does the state even come from? It turns out it wasn't a divine gift. It was born from a terrifying state of nature. And ancient Indian thinkers had a pretty powerful name for it.
Now, this isn't just some poetic metaphor, it's a foundational political concept. The Mahabharata describes a time before kings, a paradise that basically degenerated into a living hell. Greed and selfishness took over, and society just collapsed into this state of Matsya-Nyaya, where the strong literally consumed the weak. This was the problem that desperately needed a solution. And here it is, our first red pill. The state wasn't handed down from the heavens. According to these ancient thinkers, people themselves agreed to be governed. They actually sought out a king to enforce a code of law, to bring an end to the chaos. It was a practical, human-made solution to a very human and very brutal problem.
And what's really fascinating here is the attitude. In some other political traditions, the state is often seen as a necessary evil, something to be kept in check, but not here. To ancient Indian thinkers, it was an essential and actually beneficial institution. Without it, there was no safety, no property, no society. There was only the law of the fish.
Okay, so if the state is a practical solution, what does that make the king? A conqueror? A divine ruler? Well, the answer is something far more radical. 16%. This number is absolutely crucial. The Dharma Sutra writers, some of the earliest legal and ethical thinkers, were explicit about this. The tax paid to the king, which was typically around 16%, wasn't tribute. No, it was his wage, his salary for doing a very specific job, protection. Just let that sink in for a moment. This isn't just about a salary. This quote reveals a profound social contract. The king isn't the master, he's the ultimate public servant. In exchange for his wage, the taxes, he is contractually obligated to protect the people. And if he fails, he's not just a bad king. He's a thief, taking payment for a job he didn't even do. Now, we've been talking a lot about kings, right? But that's only part of the picture. For centuries, a completely different form of government thrived across India, one that for many of us has been almost entirely forgotten. While monarchy was definitely the most common type of state, especially in later periods, it wasn't the only game in town, not by a long shot. The sources, from Indian texts to the accounts of Greek historians, are crystal clear on this. There was another way. These were the Ganas, or republics. And we're talking about all sorts of non-monarchical states. Powerful confederations like the Likshavis and the Mallas, and thriving city-states. And look, this isn't just speculation. Greek historians who came with Alexander the Great wrote about them, and crucially, we have the archaeological proof. Coins issued not by individual kings, but by entire peoples like the Yodayas. This proves that for centuries, huge parts of India were governed by assemblies, not by autocrats. So whether you're in a monarchy or a republic, how is order actually maintained? The ancient answer was direct, it was unsentimental, and it was powerful. It was in fact a science. Political science itself was often called dandaniti, literally the science of the rod or the science of force. Thinkers like Manu were completely unambiguous about this. It is danda, the real tangible threat of punishment that keeps society in order. They wrote that while everyone else is sleeping, danda stays awake. In this view, law is absolutely nothing without the force to back it up. And this is the ultimate question, isn't it? If the very thing that's meant to protect you, the force of the state, is turned against you, what can you possibly do? Well, the ancient texts didn't just ponder this question,
They gave a chillingly direct answer.
And this might be the most shocking red pill of them all. This isn't a call for protest or some kind of passive resistance. This is a sanction for regicide. You find this in epic texts like the Mahabharata, and the logic is just brutal and clear. A king who violates his contract of protection is no longer a king. He is a danger to the body politic, and the people have the right to remove him violently.
So how is a tyrannical king even possible if this ultimate check existed? The answer is in how they thought about the state itself. Not as a pyramid with the king sitting on top, but as something organic and completely interdependent.
This is the Saptanga, or seven-limbed theory of the state. It views the body politic like a living organism. You have the king, the sovereign head, the Swami. But he's joined by his ministers, the Amatya, the territory itself, the Rashtra, fortifications, Durga, the army, Bala, the incredibly important treasury, Kosha, and finally his allies, the Mitra. The whole point is that no single limb could function without all the others.
And this is just a brilliant way of showing the built-in checks on power. Sure, the king might be the head, but he's totally powerless without a loyal army and a full treasury. He can't just act on a whim without the counsel of his ministers or the security of his forts. If one limb becomes diseased, let's say a tyrannical king, the other limbs suffer, and that creates an inherent pressure to restore balance to the whole system.
So, what was the ultimate point of this complex political organism? Well, it wasn't just about survival or preventing anarchy. The goals were much more ambitious.
The ancient Indian state was what we might call a culture state. Its whole purpose was to create an environment where its citizens could pursue a complete life. This included dharma, which is righteous, ethical living, artha, meaning economic prosperity and security, and even kama, the enjoyment of life's aesthetic and material pleasures. The state's job was to ensure the holistic well-being of its people.
And these ancient ideas of social contracts, of leaders as public servants, of the state's responsibility for the welfare of its people, they haven't just vanished. They echo in our modern political debates, in our institutions, reminding us that the questions we're grappling with today have been debated for millennia, right here on this very soil.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Looking at those seven limbs of the state, the leader, the ministers, the territory, the defenses, the army, the treasury, and the allies, which one do you think is the most critical for a nation to truly thrive in the 21st century?